Many people today talk about the loneliness epidemic. They say we are more connected than ever yet, somehow more alone than any generation before us. But there is another story that rarely gets told. There are people who quietly remove dozens of relationships from their lives, friends, old circles, even people they once felt responsible for, and strangely, they did not become lonelier. They became calmer. If this sounds familiar, you might have asked yourself a difficult question. Why does distance sometimes feel more peaceful than connection? The truth is that cutting people off is not always about anger or coldness. Sometimes it is about clarity. The Japanese strategist Miyamoto Musashi once wrote that the path of the warrior is the path of discipline and awareness. When you begin to see the true nature of people and energy around you, you stop fighting unnecessary battles. And sometimes the strongest move is simply stepping away. In this video, we will explore the psychology behind why some people withdraw from others and why this decision can completely change a person's inner peace. If you have ever felt this shift in your life, stay with me until the end, because one insight might completely change how you see your relationships. For most people, the idea of cutting others off sounds extreme. It sounds dramatic, maybe even unhealthy. Society often teaches us that strong people keep everyone close, that loyalty means always being available, that walking away means failure. But real life is often more complicated than that. Many people who eventually distanced themselves from others did not start that way. In fact, they were usually the opposite. They were the listeners, the helpers, the ones who stayed up late, answering messages and solving problems that were never really theirs to carry. They were the people everyone called when something went wrong. Over time, something subtle begins to happen. The emotional weight keeps increasing, but the appreciation rarely grows at the same pace. Conversations start to feel one-sided. Support becomes expected rather than valued. And slowly, the person who once gave so much begins to feel strangely invisible. Not angry, just exhausted. Psychologists sometimes describe this as emotional overload. When a person consistently absorbs the stress and expectations of others, the mind eventually looks for ways to recover balance. One of the most natural responses is distance. Not because they hate people, but because their mind is trying to breathe again. Miyamoto Musashi wrote that a warrior must not waste energy on battles that do not matter. True mastery is not about constant fighting. It is about knowing where your energy should go and where it should not. In the same way, many people who step back from relationships are not running away from connection. They are learning something that took years to understand. Not every door deserves to stay open. When someone finally reaches this realization, the change is often quiet. There is no announcement, no dramatic conflict, just a gradual shift in how much access others have to their time, their attention, and their peace. And this quiet shift is where the real psychological story begins. When this quiet shift begins, something deeper is happening beneath the surface. It is not only about emotions, it is also about how the human nervous system learns to protect itself. For years, a person may train themselves to tolerate stress from others. They listen to constant complaints. They step into conflicts that do not belong to them. They carry expectations that slowly pile up day after day. At first, it feels normal. Helping people feels like the right thing to do. But the mind keeps records even when we do not notice it. Every uncomfortable conversation, every moment of emotional pressure, every time someone takes more than they give, all of it leaves small traces inside the nervous system. Eventually, the body begins to recognize a pattern. Being around certain people no longer feels neutral. It starts to feel draining, not always dramatic, just heavy. And when the brain recognizes repeated emotional strain, it naturally searches for safety. This is why distance can suddenly feel peaceful. It is not always a decision made through logic. Often it is a quiet signal from the nervous system saying something simple. This environment is no longer healthy for you. Interestingly, the famous strategist Miyamoto Musashi once spoke about awareness in a very similar way. He taught that true strength is the ability to see situations clearly before conflict even begins. When you understand the rhythm of a situation, you do not need to force action. You simply move where balance exists. Many people who step back from relationships are learning this same principle in their own lives. They begin to notice which interactions leave them calm and which ones slowly steal their energy. And when that awareness appears, something changes inside them. If part of this idea resonates with your own experience, take a second and comment one below. It helps the algorithm share this conversation with people who may also be searching for clarity. Because in the next part, we will explore an important question. How do you know whether you are protecting your peace or simply building walls around your life? The question now becomes deeper. When someone begins to distance themselves from people, how can they tell whether they are protecting their peace or simply isolating themselves from the world? At first, the two can look almost the same. Both involve stepping back. Both involve saying no more often. Both involve reducing the number of people who have access to your time and energy. But psychologically, there is a very important difference. Isolation is usually driven by fear. Protection is driven by awareness. When a person isolates themselves, they often feel tense even when they are alone. Their mind keeps replaying past conflicts. They avoid people not because they feel peaceful, but because they feel threatened or overwhelmed. The silence around them does not feel calm. It feels heavy. Protection works differently. When someone creates healthy distance, they usually feel lighter. Their thoughts become clearer. The constant emotional noise begins to fade, and they finally have space to think about their own direction in life. This difference may seem small, but it changes everything. The philosopher Y once described awareness as the ability to observe the rhythm of a situation without being controlled by it. When you see clearly, you do not react blindly. You respond with intention. The same idea applies to relationships. When distance is guided by awareness, it becomes a form of discipline. You are not closing your life to everyone. You are simply choosing more carefully who deserves to stand close to you. This level of clarity rarely appears overnight. It often comes after years of experience and reflection. But once people recognize the difference between fear and awareness, their decisions begin to change. If this distinction makes sense to you, comment below. It is a simple way to signal that you understand this shift in perspective. Because in the next part, we will explore where this pattern often begins and why many people learn these emotional habits much earlier in life than they realize. To understand why some people become extremely selective with relationships, we often need to look much further back than adulthood. Many of these patterns begin quietly during early experiences in life. When a person grows up in an environment where emotions are unpredictable, the mind begins to develop certain survival habits. A child may learn that keeping the peace is the safest option. They may learn to listen carefully to the moods of others. They may even become the emotional support for people who are supposed to support them. At that age, none of this feels unusual. It simply becomes normal life. But the brain is constantly learning from these situations. Psychologists sometimes describe this as emotional conditioning. When a young mind repeatedly experiences tension, uncertainty, or responsibility beyond its age, it becomes very skilled at reading emotional signals. The child becomes observant, careful, always aware of the atmosphere around them. This ability can be useful later in life. Many thoughtful and empathetic adults developed this awareness early. They can sense tension in a room before anyone speaks. They understand people quickly. They know how to keep situations calm. But there is also a hidden cost. When someone spends years prioritizing the emotions of others, they can slowly lose track of their own emotional boundaries. They become the reliable one, the problem solver, the person who absorbs pressure so that others can feel comfortable. And for a long time, this role may even feel like a strength. Yet eventually, something shifts. The same awareness that once helped them adapt begins to show them a clearer picture of their relationships. They start noticing patterns: who only appears when they need something, who listens, and who only speaks, who respects their time, and who quietly takes advantage of their kindness. This moment of recognition can feel surprising, but it is actually the result of years of quiet observation. The mind finally connects the dots. And when that awareness becomes impossible to ignore, a person may begin adjusting their relationships in a calm but powerful way, not through anger, not through revenge, simply through clearer boundaries and quieter distance. This is often where personal clarity truly begins. As this clarity grows, another realization slowly appears. Not every distance is an act of rejection. Sometimes it is an act of balance. Many people believe relationships must always remain open no matter the cost. They believe loyalty means tolerating everything, but healthy psychology suggests something different. Real connection requires respect in both directions. Without that balance, even the strongest relationships eventually become exhausting. This is where the idea of boundaries becomes important. A boundary is not a wall that blocks the world. It is a quiet line that protects what matters most: your time, your attention, your emotional energy. When people begin to understand this, they often feel a surprising sense of freedom. They realize they can still care about others while also protecting their inner stability. The legendary strategist Musashi once emphasized that discipline is not only about strength in battle, it is about controlling where your energy flows. A warrior who spends energy on every conflict will quickly lose focus, but a warrior who chooses their battles carefully preserves both strength and clarity. The same philosophy applies to relationships. Not every invitation deserves your time, not every conversation deserves your energy, and not every person deserves unlimited access to your life. When someone begins living with this awareness, their relationships naturally change. Some connections grow stronger because they are built on mutual respect. Others quietly fade away because they were sustained only by habit or expectation. If you have ever noticed this shift happening in your own life, comment 3 below. It is a simple way to reflect on how your perspective may already be evolving. And stay with this video until the end, because the final insight may completely change how you understand solitude and connection. Sometimes the peace people search for in the outside world begins with one powerful decision about who is allowed to walk beside them. As we reach the end of this conversation, one final idea becomes clear. Sometimes the most important transformation in life is not about adding more people to your world. Sometimes it is about understanding who truly belongs there. Many people spend years believing that peace will appear when they fix every relationship around them. They try harder, they give more time, more patience, more energy. Chane. But eventually they discover something unexpected. Peace does not always come from controlling the outside world. Often it comes from understanding your own limits and protecting them with quiet discipline. This idea reflects a timeless principle often associated with Musashi. Mastery is not simply the ability to win every fight. True mastery is the wisdom to recognize which battles should never begin, When a person understands this, they stop reacting to every demand and begin living with intention. And that is when life becomes calmer. Not empty, not lonely, but focused. The right people do not disappear when you create healthy boundaries. In many cases, they respect you even more, and the relationships that remain become stronger because they are built on clarity rather than obligation. If this perspective gave you a new way to think about relationships, take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe for more psychology and philosophy content that helps you understand human behavior and personal growth in a deeper way. Also, share your thoughts in the comments. What is one lesson life has taught you about protecting your peace? Your experience may help someone else who is going through the same realization. And if you found this video meaningful, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message today.